We just got one. Another brick in the Great Wall of Mirabal from the 407 to the 305. Rhys Woodrow, welcome to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Miami's offensive line class of 2026 is already massive, and not just massive in terms of the size of the individuals, but 5 commits now, and they're not done yet. We will talk about that. I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for Canes County at Rivals. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen, even on a Saturday. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, we'll talk about Miami's updated class of 2026, top 10 and continuing to rise. We'll talk about what the newest Miami Hurricane commit is going to bring to those trenches in Coral Gables, because, Miami just got a verbal commitment here on a Saturday night from Rhys Woodrow, 3-star interior offensive lineman out of an excellent high school program in Orlando, Boone High School. Woodrow, 6'3.5", 311 pounds, probably still growing. And in this recruiting dub, Miami is able to beat out, these are Woodrow's other finalists, a lot of in-state competition here and a couple of other ACC competition Miami was able to beat out here. Florida, Florida State, hometown UCF, and Georgia Tech are the schools Miami beat out for this one. And in landing this commitment, a couple things that really stood out. First, the evaluation process of how Woodrow really blew Miami away when it came to the in-person scouting. And secondly, getting this one over the finish line, it's all about relationships. Rhys Woodrow is not just somebody that Cristobal and Mirabal discovered a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, or even a couple of years ago. They have been all over this guy since basically the beginning of his high school career. And he's had a multi-sport high school career. I think he's going to focus on football at the next level, but he's also an accomplished first baseman on the Boone baseball team and a very accomplished offensive lineman, of course, on the Boone Braves football team. He's been a starter at Boone since his freshman year. And for the past, 3 years, he's been one of the top interior offensive linemen in the state of Florida. And, I mentioned this is someone that Coach Mirabal and Coach Cristobal have identified. I'm told when it comes to Woodrow that a big selling point for the staff was in-person scouting. This is something Miami really values. Cristobal is all about this. I know our guy Alonzo Highsmith is no longer with the staff. He was the GM for a while. He is all about in-person scouting, and that philosophy sticks around with Cristobal, Mirabal, and Mario Cristobal's entire coaching staff. So they've really been watching Woodrow closely and getting a chance to do a lot of in-person scouting on him, during his spring period, spring practices and recent spring game at Boone. They've been absolutely blown away. So this is a player that they feel, I mentioned he's a 3-star prospect at this moment. I think this is one of those where the staff evals have Woodrow, ranked higher than, some of the so-called experts out there from the recruiting services do. Smart, physical, high motor. These are words to describe the way that Rhys Woodrow plays. We mentioned 6'3.5", 311 pounds. He's a big-bodied center and guard. They like the nasty streak that this guy plays with. He looks to finish every single play, which is something that is a non-negotiable trait for anyone who's going to play on an Alex Mirabal offensive line. Also really athletic to get out in space and in the screen game, natural pulling and natural and pass protection. I think there's a lot to work with for Miami's coaching staff once Rhys Woodrow gets to campus, assuming he's probably going to be an early enrollee in January of 2026 after he finishes out his high school season. And I like, by the way Miami keeps stacking a lot of interior offensive linemen who can possibly play center. I don't know for sure if Woodrow is going to play center or guard at Miami, but he's got enough versatility to play at either spot. Because you notice, like the last few years, Miami has had to go into the transfer portal 3 straight times to find starting centers, and it's worked out for us to this point, right? Matt Lee was excellent 2 seasons ago. Zach Carpenter played really well this past year. And, we really like James Brockermeyer, who transferred in from TCU. But now Miami is stacking the homegrown organic high school recruiting talent because they have a lot of options for the future. Nino Francavilla has been with the program for a couple of years now. S.J. Alofai-Tuli, true freshman, could be a center for the future. J.J. Sparks, who's coming in the class of 2026. And now Rhys Woodrow gives Miami another option there. So, yeah, some of these guys will probably be guards, but if you have a couple who are very capable of playing center, it's going to put Miami in a really good position for the future. And, I mentioned in-person scouting was really important for Woodrow. I'm told that his recruitment really accelerated. This is somebody, and we'll talk about it, Miami has been on this young man from the beginning, but his recruitment really accelerated in recent weeks due to his in-person spring performance. That's where the scouting really impressed the coaching staff. Alex Mirabal recently went in-home with Woodrow for a visit, and that was where he, cemented the fact that Miami was where he wanted to be. So, in this class of 2026, I mentioned Miami's got a lot of good players on the offensive line. He's joining Jackson Cantwell, who, of course, is the blockbuster commit that Miami received a couple of weeks ago from the top offensive tackle in the country. A couple of other really good offensive tackles who Miami has landed, Joel Irvin and Ben Congdon and J.J. Sparks, who I mentioned, the interior offensive lineman, could be a center or guard. So Rhys Woodrow joins already a really talented offensive line class. But again, folks, Miami's already got now 5 verbally committed. They are not done. They could end up with 7+ by the time this class of 2026 is done. And why? Why is Miami attacking the offensive line so much in this recruiting class? They're about to lose probably 3 to 4 of the offensive line starters of 2025, the season coming up. Most of that starting offensive line is going to be off to the NFL. Hopefully they all get to the NFL. At least a couple of them are going to be drafted next year. Hopefully they all get drafted, at least all the ones who are draft eligible. So you're going to be replacing multiple spots. Miami wants to keep bringing in a ton of these big-bodied guys that Mirabal and Cristobal believe in. And I mentioned not done yet with 5 verbal commits because Miami is still really working hard to try to land Cannon Pickett, interior offensive lineman from Tampa Bay Tech, Miami legacy, who's going to be making an official visit coming up in June. And Miami is also looking to land the top interior offensive lineman left in the class, Breck Colajay from IMG Academy, mega program in the Tampa area. And Colajay also going to be officially visiting Miami in June. So, they could end up hopefully with 7+ offensive linemen in this class by the time it's all said and done. We'll talk a little bit more about why Rhys Woodrow decided Miami is the spot for him and who Miami now has signed up in this top 10 class of 2026. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new breaking news episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, this Stanley Cup playoffs and NBA playoffs, it has been a blast for me, and it's been extra fun thanks to FanDuel.com. And yeah, every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot in the NBA playoffs or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than right now. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Guys, I love how you can make bets on individual players, how many shots they're going to take, over under on how many points they're going to score. The possibilities are endless, and you can even bet live. When the game starts, it's not too late to place your wagers, folks. So you want to do all of this at FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If your bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. And welcome Rhys Woodrow to the U. got a nasty streak, very athletic for a guy who's 6'3.5", 311 pounds. And I think, again, I know it's a big philosophy from Miami's coaching staff and in the evals. They love multiple sport athletes, right? I mean, there's even some that want to play multiple sports possibly at Miami. We've talked about wide receiver Calvin Russell, who Miami is heavily recruiting. We hope he picks Miami. He's still uncommitted out of Miami Northwestern, but he's also received an offer from Jay Lucas and the basketball team. Jason Lopez, receiver at Chaminade, who's a stud basketball player. He might be a guy, if Miami is able to land him, who might look to play basketball and football. I believe they both have basketball offers in addition to the football offers at Miami. We've talked about Miami landing players like Ben Congdon, who's got an elite high school wrestling background, that there's a lot of great carryover from that to offensive line with the power and the leverage. And in the case of Rhys Woodrow, they love his athleticism and his footwork that comes from playing baseball as well. So this is a player that Miami is super high on, and he is super high on Miami. He told Inside the U 24/7 that, quote, "It's been Miami since day one," he said. "They were one of the first big schools to show me love, and they've been there since the beginning of my recruiting process. I felt the most connected to Miami, and I've always known. In the back of my head, I've always had that," he said. Again, we talk about not only the fact that Miami was blown away by the in-person scouting and evaluations of him, but in order to actually get the commitment over the finish line, it's all about building relationships. It's about persistence. It's about staying in contact, which is something Miami staff are masters of this. I was recently reading about a player from the Tallahassee area who chose to commit to Cal over Florida State. And he was quoted this week in saying that Florida State didn't really start showing him love until after he committed to Cal. You're never, when Miami identifies a player that they like, you will never hear anyone say, "Yeah, Miami really dropped the ball with the communication." Like those words, at least not with the Cristobal staff, maybe previous staffs, but those words have never been uttered during this regime. He said about Cristobal and Mirabal Woodrow, "They've always kept in contact. They will text me every day," he said. When I went and saw their spring practice and I saw how Coach Cristobal and Coach Mirabal, how they run that offensive line, it's really cool to see a head coach that's that involved with the O-line. And listen, I know that was one of the big selling points for Big Jackson Cantwell. People will always try and simplify his recruitment. The folks up there in Athens, Georgia, Miami dropped a bag. It was just a money thing. It's nothing else. Okay. Or you can also add in the fact that Miami's got some of the best offensive line coaching in the country from Mirabal and the head coach, Mario Cristobal, who makes it one of the most offensive line-centric programs in the country. If it's good enough for Jackson Cantwell, it's also good enough for Rhys Woodrow, who decided that Miami was the spot for him. All right, so let's take a look at Miami's verbal commits now. And by the way, on the On3 Sports class rankings, Miami has moved up. They're number 8 in the country now, with LSU at number 1, USC at number 2, Ohio State 3rd, Notre Dame 4th, Georgia 5th, Texas A&M 6th, Oregon 7th, Miami at number 8, Alabama 9, and the Clemson Tigers have the number 10 class of 2026 at the moment. Miami has verbal commitments from, we'll go in order of how high these players are ranked, by the way. So 5-star Jackson Cantwell, that is the highest profile commit Miami has right now. Best player in the country, best offensive tackle in the country. Miami is taking swings at other 5 stars, right? You know that we're certainly here on Locked On Canes very high on Derek Cooper, 5-star athlete out of Chaminade. We hope Miami lands him. Calvin Russell, 5-star receiver. Tristan Keys, a 5-star wideout. He's committed to LSU, but Miami is among programs trying to flip him. So they're trying to bring multiple other 5 stars to join Cantwell at Miami. Miami's next highest verbal commit in terms of ranking is linebacker Jordan Campbell from Miami Northwestern. I mean, Northwestern has a ton of good players this cycle. Jalen Waters, 4-star cornerback out of Armwood. Miami's built that Armwood pipeline, that school in the Tampa area. Quarterback Darion Coleman, 4-star on on 3 Sports. There's one certain site that keeps him at a 3-star status. Everyone else has Darion Coleman at a 4-star. And Coleman, by the way, just absolutely dominated in his spring game with Jones High School in Orlando. I mean, if you guys have seen, I didn't get to watch the entire game. I don't know if that's available on the web anywhere, but if you watch the highlights, Coleman was absolutely slinging it. He looked fantastic. Miami's getting a really good one there at quarterback. Cornerback Jontavius Wyman, former Georgia commit who flipped to Miami, 4 stars. Ben Congdon, 4-star offensive tackle. Javion Mallory, 4-star running back. Camden Portis, another Miami legacy, 4-star cornerback. Joel Irvin, 3-star corner. J.J. Sparks, 3-star interior offensive lineman. And now Rhys Woodrow joins that class of 2026, which, if you notice, has been, I think, about half of the guys who are committed so far play offensive line. So that's certainly a need. That is an itch that Miami is scratching here, right? Hurricanes are still going to, and they've got some good defensive backs as well, offensive line and DB. They've got their quarterback for the class. They've got one of their running backs in the class. I think they want to add at least one more into that mix. I mean, Derek Cooper being the top guy. Don't sleep on Jay Lamar either out of Colquitt County. I know he's another recruiting target for Miami at running back. They don't have any receivers in the class yet. They're going to look to scratch that itch probably this summer, and a lot more. Probably could use more, certainly on the defensive line. James Johnson, now at Miami Northwestern, is a big-time target in the interior. So the Hurricanes still have a long way to go here. Top 10 right now, which is great. We're a long way to the finish line in December for National Signing Day. So I want to thank you all so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. You certainly know we're going to be back with you Monday at the latest. I mean, if there's any other, breaking news here on this Memorial Day weekend, we'll come at you with an emergency episode or two. I'm going to be doing a lot of radio the next couple of days. On Sunday, I'm going to be on with my guy Dan Day on Sports Day from noon to 4. And then on Monday, I'm going to be waking up very early, probably around 4:30 a.m. I'll set my alarm for, because I'm going to be filling in for Joe Rose from 6 a.m. till 10 a.m. on Monday. So I'll be doing a lot of radio. I'll still be doing Locked On Canes and Locked On ACC and a lot. I'm just not going to sleep for the next few days. So we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.